Just kidding. All right. So I am excited to take you through some very cool things in Transaction Desk and Authentisign. Matter of fact, you are going to be the second group to see some of the new changes that Transaction Desk has just made. They have made a very cool change in Authentisign. Long time coming, if you ask me. But you guys are going to be one of the first groups. I think I showed it to one other person on the call. I think it was Alan's assistant, maybe. But anyway, you guys are actually going to be one of the first groups to see the new change in Authentisign. It is actually going to streamline the process. Previously, if you sent documents in Authentisign, if you've ever used that program before, Authentisign is where you can send your clients documents. They can sign it with their fingertip. They can sign it from their phone or their computer. And it's very easy to apply their signatures. But there was one thing you couldn't do easily, and that was actually sending out sellers' disclosures and having them fill out the disclosure and sign it at the same time. You could not do that until very, very recently. And they just made an awesome change that I'm going to show you today. Basically, why that was is when you sent documents, in order for them to be legal and binding in all 50 states, they have to have two things. They have to meet the UTA compliancy, and they have to be they have to pass the information that you need in order for it to be included in the e-sign act, which basically is what makes signatures legal and binding, right? You know, I'm kind of nerdy about this. I'm going to give you the background. It's going to make more sense. So previously, when you sent documents for clients like a seller's disclosure to fill out, you were sending it in an open format. Therefore, it didn't meet the UTA compliancy because it was an open document, so they couldn't sign it. So it was a second step. You always had to turn around and resend the document out again for the signing process, and it was kind of a pain, quite honestly. Well, I'm here to show you that it's now one easy step. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to send out our seller's disclosure before we go on our listing appointment. So our sellers can actually fill it out and sign it in one easy step, and it comes right back to you, the listing agent, right in your file. So, so we're going to cover that today. So lots of good stuff. I am so lucky because one of my great coworkers is also going to be behind the scenes. Most of you know her already, but Taylor Fedewa, who is our director of communications here, she also teaches an amazing photography class. She's going to be helping out behind the scenes because we've got quite a few people, but we want you to be able to ask questions. So if you haven't taken a webinar with me before, you know I like to make it as interactive as possible. So I love when you ask questions. And so Taylor's going to be manning the questions while I go through the demonstration. If she's getting a common question, she'll probably just unmute herself and she will jump in with that question, and then we can cover those items. So where do you put your questions? It's a good question. If you open up your GoToWebinar panel, which may be minimized either at the bottom of your screen with a little blue flower, or over to the right-hand side, it may look like an orange or red arrow. If you open that up, in that panel, you will find a questions box. And so feel free to type your questions in. Don't hold them all to the end. If we're already on that screen, Taylor can jump in and we can review that again if you have a question on something. We're also recording this class, so don't worry if you get a call, hopefully to bottom line an offer or a question about your listing, and you have to step out for just a second. Don't worry, you can actually watch this class recording. I'm going to show you exactly where you can find it at the end of the class. So all that good stuff. All right, well, with that, I'm going to turn off my fuzzy hair, and I'm going to actually get into the good stuff. So today we're going to take you through Transaction Desk. We're going to do a whole soup to nuts. We're going to start at A, and we're going to work our way all the way to Z. And again, I'll be throwing in that new Authentisign, filling out your seller's disclosure right at the end too. All right. So nice to see Mickey Galley here too. So welcome, welcome. All right. I am going to turn off my fuzzy hair and we'll get into the good stuff. So right now you should be able to see my screen. And my homepage may look a little bit different than yours. It's just because I'm obviously with a different brokerage than you are, and where I am, our brokers control our center section. But really the hardest thing to get used to in Transaction Desk, and if you remember just this one little thing, you'll find that this becomes a really, really easy process. The hardest thing in Transaction Desk is literally, where do you start? If you are, let's say Angela is working with a buyer. Well, 90% of the time, or probably 99 actually, 99% of the time, you're showing a house that you found in the MLS, right? So all of that information about the school district and the address and the lengthy legal description and who has it listed, all of that is already in the MLS. So here's the key. Instead of me having to go into my forms and rekey in all of that stuff that already exists, what if I told you there was just an easy button where you could click on that button and pull 95% of what you need into your transaction right from the MLS? But that's on the buy side, right? That's if you're working with a buyer. The trickiest part of Transaction Desk is that you start in two different places. If you're on the buy side, well, the information you really want, the property you just showed, is in the MLS. So that's where you're going to start on the buy side. On the list side, well, you know what? I never want, if I'm taking a new listing, I always want to verify that that information is accurate. If I'm pulling from some other agent's listing, they might have got it wrong, right? And of course, you could review it. But really, if I'm on the list side, I always want to pull from someplace like the tax records. So that's really the big difference is, are you on the buy side or are you on the listing side? Once you figure that out, that's the hardest part of using Transaction Desk. The rest, I promise, is really just using an easy button. So let's take a look. So if anybody has a listing, you're welcome, an active listing, you're welcome to throw it in the questions box if you want to expose it to 40 something people right now. If you have a listing, you can type it in that questions box and I'll be happy to use your listing. It does need to be active because we're going to kind of go through some active pieces. If not, I will just randomly grab one. Let's see, has anybody got one that they popped in here with? Let's see. Nothing yet. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and jump into a listing. I'm just going to grab one from our market monitor then. All right. And so, as I mentioned, when you're ready to write an offer, you do not want to have to go through and rekey and all that stuff. You basically want to pull from what's already there. So I'm going to grab this listing. We're going to use this one today because there's some benefits. Not only does it grab all the information, but it's also going to grab things like your seller's disclosure, your lead-based paint disclosure for you. So if you're, let's say that Mickey's writing an offer and she wants to send her, oh, good. Actually, we do have one to use. I am going to use yours. Thank you, Lori. I love it. I love it. Oh, I got a couple. Okay, great. I love when people jump in there because it just makes it a lot more interactive when you have real life examples. So I'm going to use both of these today. And we are going to use Lori. Nice to see you, Lori. We're going to use her Rivergate listing here. And you see I just pop that right in that top, if you just use this power search, I love the power search for finding things quick. Actives and pendings always pop up at the top. So when I am ready to find, and she always has beautiful listings. So thank you, Lori, for throwing that one out there because you always have those really fancy waterfront ones too that I like to show. I use those in a lot of my classes. So thank you. All right. So once we're here, what I want to do is I want to now write an offer. And now don't get too excited, Lori, when you get $1 million offer on this property. Okay. It's not for real. It's just, we're doing a little role playing today. So when I'm ready to write an offer on this property, I really want the easy button. Yes, there's all these easy buttons right here. I can see she's got an open house scheduled. I can see that she does a great job promoting her properties with the single property website, which is right here. I can see property information. I can also go to BS&A, and for this listing, I would get a free BS&A record that I wouldn't have to pay for and go right through that little kind of looks like a garbage can icon. But there's all these easy buttons. But the one we want to take a look at today is the one that kind of looks like a blue splash, because what that's going to do is it's literally going to allow me to grab all this stuff for the listing and pull it automatically into Transaction Desk, but not just the property information, because Lori's done a great job. She's got her filled out seller's disclosure and lead-based paint here under associated documents. So it's going to pick those up and copy those over for me too. So go ahead and take a look. I'm going to say I'm all excited, showed this beautiful property, ready to write my offer. And I now want to pull all of that information from her Rivergate listing over into my transaction. So the first thing it needs to know is, okay, we're doing a transaction. What are we going to apply? Well, in this case, I really want to apply because I'm on the buy side. I already know who has it listed. I would want to apply my company buyer packet. By the way, if we have any brokers on the call, if there is a buyer packet that you want to show up first for your agents, did you know you can simply put a little period in front of it and it will always pop up? So, and same thing if you're an agent, if there's a package that you've set up, a buyer package or a listing package that you want to always be at the top of your list and you find yourself like me where you got a lot of them here, you can actually put a period in front of the names and it will shoot it up to the top like you see here on mine. All right, so I'm going to say I want to apply my buyer packet. First question is, who am I representing? Now, if I had been lucky enough to list this beautiful property, I might be representing both of the transaction sides. Unfortunately, I'm not, so I'm just going to be the selling agent, right? So I'm going to pick selling agent. And what this is designed to do is really walk you through a wizard so that you don't miss any steps. Now, I'm going to be honest, as an agent of 24 years myself, I don't want to use the wizard every single time. I don't think any agent does. I mean, that's really not the goal, right? The goal is that you also can set up basically a dashboard with all of this information on one easy dashboard. So I'm going to show you how to do that today as well. But really, the goal for me right now is I want to pull as much information from the listing into my contract forms. So I really only have about 4 or 5 pieces of information that I got to add in, like price, like the contact name, things like that, that only you are going to have. Everything else should be auto flowing right into the transaction. So I'm just going to hit create. And again, it's going to take us into a wizard, but really the key for convenience is everything I can do in this wizard, I can also do from one easy dashboard, which we're going to look at. And it really does make it so much simpler. Oh, looks like my internet connection might be running a little bit slow. There we go. Try to speed that up. There we go. Had a couple things open. Sometimes it's hard to have too many things open when you're live streaming. Okay, there we go. All right, so that's taking us into step 1. Now look how cool this is. It's not only brought in the photos to identify the transaction, but it's brought in the address, MLS number, the year it was built, the school district, the city, the lengthy legal description, the tax number, all of this, the subdivision name, all of this is now flowing not only into my wizard, but in all of the forms that I applied in my packet. Remember, your packet is just your listing packet, your sales packet. It's just the forms that you've pre-set up. And don't worry, if you didn't set those forms up, I'm going to walk you through that too. All right. So the next thing is there's really not a lot I need to do here, right? By the way, whether you are on the listing side or the sales side of this, it's basically a generic wizard. You're filling out your side. So as I can see here, this is the listing information coming from the listing side. I'm obviously going to be on the purchase side, so I'm going to go to that section and I'm going to start filling in just what didn't auto-populate. Like, what does your buyer want to pay? So I see that Lori has this listed for $425. Looks like a gorgeous home. We better get in on this. We're going to send her an offer for $430,000. If there is an EMD deposit, I can put that on here. But here's your first time-saving tip and technique. Okay, so your first little, oh, I didn't know that. If you go to over here, even though it looks like property includes would be on the listing side, did you know if you take the time to put in things like stove, built-in microwave, lawnmower in the backyard, whatever it happens to be, did you know that it will carry over to all of the forms that ask for appliances and inclusions? That's right, it will actually carry that over to all of the forms that are asking what's going to be included on your purchase agreement. Same thing with exclude. Let's say that there's a hideously ugly play structure that you want excluded and you want removed, or maybe there's something you want to exclude on your offer. Maybe they have not wanted to leave the chandelier and you want to put that in your offer, that will be excluded. This is where you could put that, and it will also carry that over. So again, it's really pulling most of this directly from your MLS report. However, I'm just going to walk through and add in any missing pieces. Like, what is my offer date? So I'm on step 2 now. Now I'm going to kind of do this middle of the road, but just so everybody kind of knows, when you're looking at the dates are kind of twofold. One, obviously, it's the dates that are going to appear in your contracts. But if you are an advanced user, you can also set this up so you get automated reminders. So for someone like Suzanne, who does a lot of business, I see her signs all over in my area. She's big in the Richmond area where I live. For her, she might want an automated process set up. So every time she takes a listing, it sends her a reminder to put up her sign, add the lockbox so that she never misses a step. So that's a really easy way. And I'm going to kind of go over that. Again, if you're just looking for the basics, this is not something you have to do. Just know that it's there. For me as an agent, one thing I always forget, I don't know what it is, what my problem is, probably because I get all excited about the closing, but I constantly forget to schedule the final water read, right? And you're like running around last minute and you're like, oh man. So if you're like me and you know that closing date is coming close, you can set up an automated reminder 5 days before to order that final water read. And it will just send you an email reminder or someone on your team that you choose. So we're going to take a look at that. Again, if you don't want to use the automated reminders, you don't have to. It's completely optional. If you're a little uncomfortable with technology, don't feel like you have to include all of this. Even if you just do the basics, that's fine. So we're going to go where it says offer date. Obviously, that's going to be today. Maybe we're giving them 2 days to get back to us on the offer. We're going to say maybe 5 p.m. So let me do this. And there we go. And so you can actually go in and now add in any dates, like when they have to apply for their mortgage, what their commitment, maybe you're giving them 30 days to get a mortgage commitment. All of that can be applied right from here. All right, so there is, as I mentioned, right over here on the right side of your screen, there's a bunch of options. The one I want to call your attention to is that automated process I was just describing, like tasks. By the way, tasks are just singular. If you had multiple tasks, you could even set up a checklist. So let's say Suzanne wants to have a task for putting on her lockbox, a task for someone to install her sign, so she can actually establish a whole grouping of tasks, which are just simply a checklist. But let's take a look. So I want to say that I want to set up that automated reminder process. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, I am going to add, we're just going to do an easy one, install a sign. Most everybody's going to do that, maybe unless you're in a condo with HOA policies that maybe don't allow you to, but the majority of us are going to do that, right? And here's where it gets interesting. So in real estate, there is really no specific date, right? Like you're not going to install your lockbox every October 1st, right? There's no specific date. However, you can relate it to a transaction date. Again, a good example would be that final water read 5 days before closing. Maybe I want that reminder. But in this case, maybe I want it to be related to another task, like getting the listing, right? So I can say, I want to relate this. I want a reminder to go 1 day after maybe my list date. Maybe, and you can set it up on all different items. You can set it up on list date, and you can even customize what goes in here too. But maybe I want that 1 day before, or maybe I want to set this up so the sign is installed so I have enough time to get pictures 2 days after my list date. Again, if you have team members, you're also, so let's say Suzanne's team, she's got 4 or 5 people in her team. She wants to have Colleen on her team install the sign. She can actually have that reminder go to her. So a lot you can do here. It's really, and break down here, you can have them notified if there's a change, notify anybody who's assigned to the task, or just make sure that those people that you've selected are getting the email. So if you're on a team, it's a great way to automate that process, just makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so again, if you decide, you know what, that's extra steps, I'm not interested in doing that, don't worry, don't have to. For me, because I work, it seems like 50 plus hours a week right now at the MLS with all these crazy changes, those automated reminders are super, super helpful. And I only sell a couple of properties a year, but so for me, just having those things in place is really helpful. All right, so how did I get back to my wizard? Right up here at the top, you can always jump back to the wizard, or you can jump to any section that you're working in. So I'm going to go ahead and just do step 3. Now, again, I really like this wizard for getting to know it. I wouldn't use it every single time. Usually right about now, I get that question of, Colleen, this seems like a lot of steps. Well, on average, I'm showing you everything, but on average, it's going to take you between 7 and 9 minutes to fill out your listing paperwork if you follow these steps. So I promise it's not as much as it seems. All right, the cool thing is, because we pulled this from the MLS, it's already got my good friend Lori Brown's information. He is the listing brokerage, so her brokerage information is there. I, of course, got my information and my brokerage, but this is a key step. So this is your third time-saving tip. This is to include everyone in the transaction. And what do I mean by that? Well, the other broker, the co-oping broker, is already here. But if I have an attorney, if I'm sending this to my buyer, all of these people should be here. So I could go in and I could add a new transaction contact. I could pull from maybe a contact I've worked with previously. We've already added you, so you can eliminate that step. Or maybe you have your contacts in Google. You want to pull them right from your Google contacts into here, you could do that as well. Today, we're going to keep it nice and easy. So we're just going to create a brand new transaction contact. This is, by the way, the most important step. If you remember nothing else, remember by using this drop down and picking the type. And as you can see, when I mentioned that you could set up all different types of roles, you can see I've put in Chuck's appraisal company. You can actually customize in your settings what you want to be here. But the one we're looking for right now is obviously our buyer. Because if you select the role, it will save you so much time in the auto tagging and the e-signatures. And I'm going to show you how easy that is today. But if you select the role, it will know exactly where to put Barry Buyer's name on all of your contracts, and it will set up all of your signatures in advance for you without you having to do a thing. So it will save you a good 10 minutes if you just put in the type, or basically the role that this person is playing in the transaction. So we're going to call this Bertha Buyer. We're going to call her Bertha B. Buyer, just so we can find her easily later for some examples. And you're obviously going to put in her email address. I'm just going to use mine here. Lori, again, when you get this offer, don't get too excited, okay? And that's really all you have to do to create a contact. There are 3 additional fields that I do want to point out here, though. And these are if it's a power of attorney, if it's an escrow, let's say you're working as a power of attorney, or they're buying it on behalf of a company, or if it's if it's in an estate, and the attorney wants their name to not be Bertha Buyer, but Bertha Buyer, trustee for the estate of. So that's really what these lines are for. And what they are is the legal name is what will be pre-printed underneath the signature line. How the attorney wants them to sign. Like, I just worked with an attorney across the street not that long ago, and he was very particular that both the pre-printed name underneath the signature read Sally Sue, power of attorney for Ed Hill, and he even wanted the date of the estate, which I thought was kind of odd, but that's how he wanted it signed, and that's what he wanted pre-printed underneath the signature line. And so if they are signing in a different capacity, that's what these 3 lines are set up for. So 99% of the time, I'm just putting in their name and their email address, and it's that simple. There is also a place that you can add in an address for your buyer or seller. But for really most cases, I just leave it just like this. Simple. Now Bertha Buyer has been added as my buyer for this transaction. All right, I'm going to jump over to our next step. But remember, if you're working with an attorney, if you have multiple buyers, make sure that you are going in and creating each one of those so it's really easy to send your documents out, especially when you get to the signing portion, because there's even an attorney role in signing. Although the attorney's not signing anything, you can actually get an acknowledgement that the attorney reviewed and accepted the documents before it went to your client. So some cool things that they've added there too. All right, so let's jump over to step 4. This is one of my favorites. By applying the packet of forms, it is now allowing me to see I don't have to go hunt and find different forms. Everything that my company required, and boy, do they require a lot. Every single thing that my company requires is now added in here. And so I don't have to worry about going to find this form or that form. However, let's say that this is an FHA deal and I need an FHA form and I don't have one in here. I'm sure I do because we are like form overload at my company. But I'm going to go ahead and hit add. And I'm just going to see now these are all your libraries, by the way. So these are all the libraries that you can choose from. Maybe you're looking for the new Michigan Realtor forms. Those are now in there. They're in there kind of, I say, with everyone across the country changing their forms due to the NAR settlement and MLS practice changes. They're in there, but they're not fillable yet. So they're in there, you can grab them, but you can't exactly have all the auto population yet. That's coming. They should be done here shortly. But you can imagine with every state and every company in every state changing their forms, the form companies are going to be backed up for a very, very long time. But anyway, back to my point. I have all these libraries. How do I know what FHA form I want? Easy way to do that. Instead of opening each library, you can go right up to this, what I call the cheat filter. Just type it in there, and now I can see every form I have access to with FHA. So I know my company has one. If I want to add that one in, I'm simply going to check it, hit add, and now it's in my forms for me to use. If you're not sure, let's say you're looking at this form and you're like, is that the form I really wanted? Remember, you can always do a form preview. That's kind of new too. If you go over to the right and you click on the preview button, that's going to show you what that form actually, oh yeah, that's the disclosure I was looking for. So very easy. If you have OCD like I do, and you're very particular about the way your forms arrive to your client, I guess I'm kind of old school back in the Marge Fraser days. If anybody knows who she is, I loved her. She was just amazing. She was a real estate teacher, but very, very funny and in this area. And she always said, hey, before you ever start talking about anything else, they better have a disclosure of who you represent. So that's very clear. So the very first form I send them, of course, now we already have our buyer representation agreements, right? Hint, hint, nod, nod. So the very first form that I want here is, of course, my agency disclosure. So you can drag and drop these forms in any order, and that's the order they will either print or email, or in this case, if I'm sending through Authentisign, that's the order that they'll see them in Authentisign too. Okay, so the one thing that always puzzled me in this Transaction Desk program was, what the heck is the difference between a form and a document, right? Because I don't know about you, I've kind of always thought a form was a document was a form. Well, not so much in Transaction Desk. So forms are anything that's pre-printed that you can go into those form libraries and grab. So again, a form, a good example, if I'm looking for a swimming pool addendum, when I type in swimming pool, or I could even just type in the word pool, would probably even be a better key name. You can see how many I get now. If I wanted to add in my company hot tub and pool addendum, I can do it that way, right? So finding the forms is easy. However, so if the form is a pre-filled out form that I can grab, then what is a document? Well, a document And Lori did a great job. This was a great example to use. So thank you, Lori, for throwing that address out. She's got her bylaws attached. By the way, I love when agents do that. If there is an HOA, do you know how nice it is when, especially when you're selling a condo, when you are calling over and over again, can you have a dog? Can you have a dog? When you can just see if you can have a dog in associated documents, it eliminates so many calls and so much frustration. So putting things like the HOA in there, putting things like the bylaws, this was a great example. Thank you again, Lori. Having the filled out seller's disclosure and lead-based paint, having, if you require certain offer docs or if there's a survey. I got to tell you, I also put my Kuba Casa for my listings in associated docs. I add them to the photos and associated docs. So then I can very easily email them out, but they also come over when agents are writing their offer. They see the layout, they have it right in front of them. I love that. So in this case, Lori has her filled out seller's disclosure right in here. See, this is a really good one to use because we're going to talk about the seller's disclosure and how they can fill it out like this online too. So everything I need is here. Why this is really so important, and let me walk you through why I think this is such a big deal, is how many times do we have to go? So we fill out our offer, right? We're filling out our docs. We want to get it in as fast as possible because let's face it, there's 9 other offers by the time you get in the door at this point, right? Now I got to go back into Paragon. I got to go get the seller's disclosure. I got to download the seller's disclosure. Now I got to resend that out because I need the buyers to sign it. You see the convenience of everything basically being pulled over into the documents for you. You can send everything out at one time to be signed. I don't have to piecemeal it from different places. Okay, so how do you get, so we have the documents, of course, that come over from associated docs. But let's say we have a pre-approval letter. This is a good example. And I want to add my pre-approval letter here. So it's right away when I'm ready to send my offer, my pre-approval letter is going to go with that offer because any good agent isn't going to accept an offer without a pre-approval. So what we want to do is we want to bring that pre-approval in. Or maybe you have something like a filled out home warranty, or maybe you wanted to add something that your buyer sees for the lender as well. How do you get those outside pieces, or pre-title if it's on the listing side? These would be all examples of documents. It's not something that TransactionDesk is set up with the autofilling, right? It's something, but you want to have it part of your transaction, especially so your office can see it. A lot of offices now have kind of regulation departments, right? They're checking to make sure everything is in here. So I want to be able to pull those documents in. So in order to do that, I'm just going to go up to this add button, and you can literally drop up to 20 files on here at one time. So let me kind of show you. If you have, let's see what I got in here. I don't know what I got in here. Do I have PDF I can grab really quick? Let's say that this is an offer and I want to pull that in. I can actually really easily do that by simply clicking on it right from my downloads, or let's say it's on your desktop. So if I have something really easy, I was kind of hoping I'd have one right here. You can drag and drop it on here. I'll show you that in just a second. But if it's on your computer, let's say you saved it to your desktop, you can also just click that blue bar. Let me find one of my transactions here. We'll use a real life one, make it a little more simple. So let's say I want to pull in an offer to purchase that someone just sent me. I can just double click on it, and that easily, that outside document has just been brought in. So you can see it's right down here at the bottom now. I'm going to shrink this. Maybe let me try to minimize. As you can see, this is probably why I have a million things open. It's running a little slower. If you have things on your desktop, like I'm looking at this PDF right here, if I want to add that in, I can literally just drag up to 20 things right onto that bar, and immediately it's added in. So generally, if I'm creating a listing, I put a listing folder right on my desktop and I just pull everything in. So it's now part of my listing. So again, the big takeaway here is documents are different than forms. Forms are going to be those items that are there for you to fill out with the fillable blanks. Documents are just anything else that you're bringing in. All right, one other thing I always get questions about is this fax back cover sheet. And you're like, I didn't put that? Lori's thinking right now, I didn't add a fax back cover sheet. Well, actually what that does is it creates a personalized fax cover sheet for the transaction. Now, I don't know about you. I don't fax anything anymore. Email really has replaced faxing altogether. But I do have a really cool thing you can do with this fax cover sheet. One, you can email documents into a transaction on your phone if you download the TransactionDesk app. Did you know if you are, and it's really funny because I just got a call on this today. Did you know if you are on your phone and you're going through your email, somebody just sent you an addendum and you're like, oh, I don't want to forget to put that in my file for the office, right? Did you know you can open up the TransactionDesk app, click on that document that somebody just sent you, and you can actually move it to that file in TransactionDesk, and you'll see it on your computer and your phone simultaneously. So the idea is more of us really are doing things. Would I take a whole listing on my phone? No, I wouldn't. But do I do addendums all the time? I was at Jimmy John's, my son's baseball game. He's the bat boy there. And I just needed to cross something off, just a simple addendum. That's super great when you can go right into TransactionDesk, pull up an addendum, type in 10 words or cross something off, and then send it out for signatures all right from your phone. So it's super easy. It looks identical to what we're looking at here. It's obviously just smaller. So keep in mind, if you haven't downloaded the TransactionDesk app, you do want to do that. But the fax cover sheet, nobody faxes anymore. But let's say that Suzanne just closed on property and they give her that big ugly file folder, right, with all that closing documents, right? You don't want to run all the way to the office and, you know, scan it in, drop it off, but you do want to make sure you get paid. You can actually take those closing docs, and what I do is I just print this fax cover sheet off, and then I lay all of it right behind me is my fax machine. I lay it all on my fax machine with that cover. Do you know it actually sends it right through the fax line? This barcode that you're seeing actually knows what transaction to put it in. You don't have to touch it again. You don't have to do anything with it. It actually sends it right to that specific transaction and sends you an email notification that it's there so you can click on it and make sure that you didn't get any pages upside down or things like that. And everything, I mark the file closed and I'm done, right? So really, really easy ways to get those outside documents in. And Taylor, I see the questions button going crazy. So if you need to jump in with any questions, go right ahead, okay? All right. So this,
Colleen, there was only just a couple addresses sent, and then
okay.
just little comments about Marge being so great and how great you look today, things like that. So no questions yet, but definitely don't hold back if you guys do have any questions.
Well, thank you for all the nice words. Yeah, I finally lost a little weight, so it was. I'm feeling good today. I'm feeling good. Feeling like I'm getting back to myself because I was a little chunky there for a while. All right, so back to the fax cover sheet. As you can see, when you take a look at it, it actually is specific to that transaction, and that's how it knows. So basically how it works is it goes through the phone line. It's an 888 number. It goes through the phone line, hits the fax machine. The fax machine reads that and says, hey, this belongs in transaction 123 Main Street, and that's where it's deposited. So I love that. I don't really fax anymore, but this is a great way to get a lot of documents without having to touch them and move them and save them and bring them in. It's just a pain in the neck. So that's an easy way. Okay, so let's do some real life. If it was all this simple, right? If real estate was just like you fill out an offer and guess what, Lori accepts it. Not really the way it is, right? So you have to be able to do those other pieces too, like countering an offer. What happens if Joe Schmagegi literally brings you a paper offer and sets it on your desk? What do you do then? How does that work here? So you got to have those real life scenarios too. So very easy for me. When I get a paper offer, because it still does occasionally happen, sadly, I usually will scan it in right to my computer. So how do you counter those offers? And that's really the big thing. That's where I get most of my questions. How do you now go in and how do you make those changes, or how do you counter that offer and still make it look professional without picking up a pen and scratching it like chicken scratch, right? So I'm just going to pretend that I got an offer, I scanned it in, and I pulled it into my transaction. I'm going to kind of role play this with you if you don't mind. So here is that offer. Now I'm going to say, so Lori looked at it and she goes, Colin, we already got a 450 on this, and it's a beautiful home. My client doesn't want to lose it. So I need to be able to counter this, make it look nice, and get it right back to Lori in a really easy way. That's where this painter's palette up here comes into play. This painter's palette allows you to basically use Adobe markup tools. I'm going to blow this up as much as I can here just so you can kind of see it. All right, so we've got, remember how I said those, anything to be included or excluded is going to carry over to your form. So we've got our microwave, our stove, whatever you're including there. This whole top half, as you see, has already started to auto-populate here. But let's take a look at this price. So there can be a few things. By the way, if you want to jump to other pages of your document, you go right up here. Maybe I want to highlight for my client that we got them a 2-year home warranty. Or maybe I want to highlight something on the document. You can actually just click on the highlighter tool and expand it to where you want to highlight. If there is something you want to cross off, maybe a broker, there are some brokers out there that do this, has hard coded that you have to buy their home protection program, and you want to cross that off. Of course, where we are, we would have to have all parties initial these types of changes. However, I do know we have some vendored MLS people on the class today, so let me not get myself in the trouble I got in last week and get yelled at. If you are with a vendored MLS that does not allow, and there's a couple of them, that does not allow strikeouts of any kind on the transactional forms, please don't listen to me. If your MLS has the policy that changes can only be done with a separate addendum and no cross-offs are allowed, follow that policy. Our policy for my brokerage, and I just speak for mine alone, is that if we make a change to a document like this, we just have to have all parties initial it. However, I am aware that there are some boards and some MLSs that do not allow any types of changes. So if that's your board's policy, please follow that. Don't get me in trouble so that, I get a call from Dave, our CEO, saying, what did you say? So whatever your policy is for your brokerage, your board, or your MLS, please follow that. For us, I can cross things out. I just have to have my clients initial them. All right, but let's take a look at really where we're using this the most. So Lori got this offer, and she says, that's great, Colleen, but I want to make sure that the price is $450. So I'm going to go up to this text box here. I'm just going to show you what I do, and then I'm going to show you how it works. And I'm just going to make a text box. I usually like to do it where there's no other writing because it can be kind of hard to see. So we're going to send Lori a $450,000 offer. Don't worry, Lori, it's going to be cash today. In my dreams, right? I never get those buyers. Okay, so let's go ahead. We've dragged this up. Look at my OCD meter just went off the charts because you can see not only can you not read that, but it looks terrible, right? And that would not work for me. So keep in mind, you can right click into your text box. You can change your font size. I'm going to say that probably looks like about a 9 point, I think. Pretty close, maybe an 8. You can change the color. You can make it bold if everything's bold in that paragraph and you don't want it to stand out. So that's a little better on the sizing, but still OCD meter, that would never work for me. So how do I make this look clean? And the answer is if you right click, you can actually change it from transparent to a solid background. Now, when I'm layering in, and obviously I would take the time and make the box a little smaller, and I would probably take out the $sign that I included here. But now when I lay it on, it looks a lot better, right? And so you can actually adjust your font size so it fits better. You can adjust the typeset as well. So don't be afraid to add those things. So again, you need to cross something off. Maybe Lori said, nope, we're absolutely not leaving the stove, the microwave, any of those items. I can cross those off if my board and broker allow, or I can go in and I can simply create a text box and make that change here. There are some other ones. I'm going to be honest, I hate the free draw one. I seem to get it on there and then all of a sudden I can't get it off well. So the free draw one is not my favorite. I do like the highlighter. You can highlight bulk text, single line text. A lot of people ask me what this one is. This is kind of an old Marge Fraser too, and I did absolutely adored her. She was so funny. She could really make you care about stuff that normally you would never ever care about, like lawsuits, and normally it would go right over the top of my head, but she really made it so interesting and so fun, and I think that's why I miss her so much. Her con ed was legendary. But anyway, she would always say there should never be blank lines on contracts. So that's kind of what this redact is for. A redact is where you can basically create a bunch of, they kind of look like a bunch of stars, if you will, on the line. So it doesn't look like it was left blank. And you can make them larger or smaller, but it looks like that they did take the time to fill something into that. I don't really do that anymore, but that used to be a big thing. So that's there as well. And of course, you can jump from page to page. So that, in a nutshell, is how you can, obviously you can go in, you can now save these changes. I always like to do a save as, because I always like to keep my original intact. So I'm going to save this as, yes?
Hey, Colleen, can you
Yes.
just show one more time where you click to get the cross-off tool? I know you're right
Yes.
within it, but just where they go
Yes.
from to
Perfect.
start,
Yes.
please.
So right up here at the top, these are going to be all of your tools. So if there's something you want to cross off, you're just, basically you'll know the tool is selected because it'll have a little box around it. Then you're just going to find the area on your contract that you want to cross off. Just drag your mouse over it until you have that whole sentence or that whole paragraph, whatever you're looking for, crossed off. And you could do it as large as you wanted. So let's say you wanted to take out a whole particular paragraph. You could do that too. If you ever get something on there, don't panic. Just right click and you can remove it. So if it didn't come out like you wanted, just right click. So I'm going to do it again. It's right up here at the top, this little line. I'm going to drag it here. And I want to cross out, they can see now I'm doing more of a whole paragraph, right? And you're just literally dragging it where you want it to go. If you messed it up like I just did, I realized I didn't grab the bottom sentence there. Just go ahead and right click that delete, and that's going to remove it. So really easy. It's just like PDF tools that you use in other programs. It's really not hard. Just remember to save it because we want to have that as, I'm actually started saving. I don't think it finished, but you can actually go in and save it. And I always like to do a save as because I like to always keep my original in place. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show you is probably one of my favorite, and it's a newer feature too. It's the document slicer. So I'm going to give you an example of why this is so cool. But let's say Suzanne and I are doing a deal, and she's got this beautiful listing, and I want to send over my offer right away. So generally, when I'm sending things to my buyer, like my buyer representation agreement, my exclusive buyer agency, my disclosure, my all of these items, I usually send it with the purchase agreement, right? So it's all together. But on my buyer representation agreement, I noticed it's got the phone number for the buyer, what the buyer was looking for, how much the buyer was going to spend, what the buyer's address is. So now everything's been signed by my buyer in this one nice little envelope, right? The problem with that is now I want to turn it around and I wanted to send it to Suzanne right away, but everything is in one envelope. So I don't want to send Suzanne, not that I love Suzanne, I know she wouldn't care, but let's say you don't know the agent and you don't want to send them your buyer's phone number and your buyer's address and how much the buyer was going to spend. Let's say they were going to spend $450, you're offering $420. Certainly shows there's a little wiggle room in your offer, right? So those are things that I would not want to include. So how do you, if you're driving along and your buyer has signed everything in one nice little package and you now have it back, you take out something you don't want the co-oping agent to see without having to go back to the office, print everything, separate it, rescan it, and now send it. Well, you can actually do that either in the app or in TransactionDesk, and it's called the document slicer. So let's take a look at that one. And I love this. I use it all the time. It's super simple, even in the app. 10. So we're looking at this purchase agreement here. So I was going to do a quick preview just to kind of give you an idea. We talked about this tool, which is obviously the markup tool. But the one next to it looks like a page with 2 pages sliced out, right? And that's exactly what it is. It's the document slicer tool. So we're going to pretend for just a moment this is a whole package, right? It could do it with one document, or you could do it with 20 documents in your PDF. But I'm going to say I want to send Suzanne page 1, page 2, and page 3, and page 4. But I don't want her to see my buyer's agency forms, which are here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold down my mouse and I'm going to select the pages that I want to send to Suzanne for my offer. Then I'm going to go to save. And really all I'm doing, again, I always like to do a save as. All I'm doing is offer or. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and now save this. And basically, I've taken that 7-page document down to just the 4 pages that I want to send to that co-oping agent. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. It's now going to be in my documents. And that makes it very, very simple. So that way, when I'm ready to send things out quickly, everything's right in my document. Here's my Lori Brown offer that we sent. Here's my offer for Suzanne. This is going to be just my 4 pages instead of the 7, but everything is here now for me. So you can easily slice documents off, even if you've got them back and they're all commingled. You can remember, even in the app, you can do that. So you can send things out quickly without giving away confidential information. All right, so congratulations. You have walked through the entire purchase side of a transaction. And I know what you're thinking. Holy cow, Colleen, that's a lot of steps. And you're right. Remember, on average, I went through everything, tasks, checklists, reminders, but on average, it's about 7 to 9 minutes. Now, as much as I love that cool wizard that I just took you through that is all these steps, I don't want to do that every time. After you know the product, you just want to have everything laid out as you see right here on my dashboard. Problem is, I don't believe the Transaction Desk gives you a good dashboard to start off with, personally. When I got in here, there were like checklists and faxes. I'm like, people don't fax anymore. Why would that be on your dashboard? Doesn't make any sense. So make all of those steps that are in your wizard right here on your home page of your transaction. And here's how you do that. There is a little lock right here. Now, I didn't include any of the ones in blue here because, quite honestly, I can do that all from here and here anyway. It didn't make any sense to me. But I did want to have my overview of my transaction. I did want to have a contact. So just like I showed you in the wizard, if you want to add Bertha Buyer's husband, Barry Buyer, remember how in the wizard we just clicked create a new transaction, or a new contact, and it brought us to this screen? Same exact things, but I can do it all from here. One I definitely think you should add to your transaction dashboard that they don't give you out of the box, which makes no sense to me, is this Authentisign one. Because did you know, if you follow the steps I'm going to show you when you're signing, anytime your client signs something, it automatically is deposited back in your transaction right here for you if you add this box. So this is an important one. So let's say you don't have this box. Let's pretend that you do not have the Authentisign box because it doesn't come out of the gate that way. Go to those green buttons when you unlock your dashboard. Grab that Authentisign box and just drag it. You can make them larger, you can make them smaller so that they fit. But grab the Authentisign and add that in there. That, when you're going back into your closed files 3 years from now, do you know how nice it is to see all of the signed docs right there? It makes it so much easier. Recently, I had somebody who I helped them purchase their home, and now they're ready to list. So nice when you can go back into your file and see what they bought it for, what they paid, all their closing docs are here, when you closed on it. It's just really nice to have all that information. All right. If I want to add a form, just like I showed you before, click on the plus. I can add that form from here. Want to add a document, same thing. So having this dashboard set up the right way is really crucial as a time saver. So I'm going to go ahead and now lock it. Dashboard is set. You can change it at any time. It's not set in stone, but I promise you, definitely add the Authentisign box. It's not there when you open it, but you definitely need that one going forward. Okay, so that is the entire purchase side. I promise the listing side is going to go a little quicker because, as I mentioned, the hardest thing about Transaction Desk is where to start. Lori Brown had that beautiful listing in the MLS. So on the purchase side, we clicked that easy button, right? It says start a transaction, brought up all her great information. If you have a property flyer, if you've got Coupa Casa, if you've got, if you're not familiar with Coupa Casa, it's an awesome floor plan app. I put it in my photos as well. It's a free floor plan app, so it's super cool. But I brought everything over from the MLS. But if I'm doing a listing side, I really want to get that from a place like a municipality record. I want to pull that in from a property record, like a more trusted, not that I wouldn't totally trust Lori, she always does a great job, but not every agent unfortunately does. So I really don't want to take the advice of an agent who, especially maybe that I've never met, and say, okay, yeah, all these facts are true about the property. No, of course not. So what we want to do is we want to go up to add a new transaction, but this time we're going to be on the listing side. So we're going to say that we are going to list a property at 41539, my old trusty example here. Now, some people say, well, I like to have the client name there. You know, the only problem is if you sell Bob Schmagegi more than one house, you got to open 5 file folders for Bob Schmagegi when you're trying to find that file. So I kind of always like to do it by property address dash Bob Schmagegi, and that way I can quickly find it, providing you spell Schmagegi correctly, I guess. All right, so template. Now I'm on the listing side, so of course my listing package is going to be key. But where do I pull in? It's going to know because I picked my listing packet. I'm the listing agent. But where do I go to pull the data, not from the MLS, but from the trusted property source? Well, in this little drop down, instead of using my role source MLS, which we should have Brian put MLS there, by the way, we actually want to pull from Realist property information. So when Brian put this together, he was so excited. And, you know, Brian, if you've never met him, he's our chief technology officer, just the nicest guy in the world, but he's never sold a house in his life. So when he showed me this and he said, now all you got to do is put in your tax ID. And I go, okay, where do I get the tax ID from? And he's like, well, you don't know the tax ID? And I go, Brian, we think of things as addresses as agents. So instead of having to do all the extra work of looking up this stuff, simply go over here to the right, click on tax search. But this is your fourth time-saving tip. All these fields that you see here, don't fill them out. There's only 3. If you fill out all of these fields, I can almost guarantee you this step is not going to work, because tax records are very specific. Meaning if I type in Wessel Drive Court, or I type in too much information, or I spell out Clinton Township, but it's Clinton TWP in the tax record, it's not going to match, right? And there's a lot of tax records. So how do you ensure you're always going to get a match? Well, here's what you do. You do have to put in the county, because that's how Realist works. So you're going to put in that I'm going to list this property in Macomb County. You are going to fill in the street number. This is just the route street number, happens to be 41539, and the route street name only. What I mean is this happens to be Wessel Drive, but leave off the drives, the ways, places, the avenues, leave all of that stuff off, because I promise you, if you put more in and it doesn't match exact, you're not going to get a result. Hit search tax data just like that. You can see how fast it now found that parcel number. That's the one I want to use, and I'm going to pull that data into my new listing transaction. So I'm going to say, okay, let's create it. Once again, you're going to see does some cool things here. Not only did it pull all of the property information, year built, school district, tax number, lengthy legal description, subdivision, all that's coming over, right? But when it comes to step 3, where we had to add in the sellers and buyers, it already did that. There are actually 2 sellers on this property, Samantha Abreu and Anthony Wiegand, and it already pulled them in. So guess what? On my listing contracts, their names are already going to be there, and it's going to know every place that their signatures need to be applied, which I love. Okay, so it makes it a little easier. I don't even have to add in my sellers to my paperwork. Okay, this is a big one. If you are like me, and I'm a little type A personality, I like to put in my own listings just because I know if I screw it up, I have no one to blame but me. And I know how hardworking our admins are. They're getting closings ready, right? They're getting everybody coffee. They're taking calls. They're setting up showing appointments. They're doing all of this stuff, right, at one time. So for me, I just assume put all of my own information in for my listing. So we created this interactive data sheet. And personally, I like the data sheet for adding the information to the MLS better. And let me show you why. In Kubacasa, they have a new feature where you can literally copy and paste the room sizes in here, which I totally love. You can also see the features all open. I don't have to open each compartment to just check, 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 go down the fields and the features, right? If you've ever added a listing in, just kind of show you what I'm saying. If you've ever added a listing in, this is what you see in Paragon. And you have to expand each one of these, right? Then you have to go, some of these like ZL source, I don't know about you as an agent, but I don't know what the heck a ZL source is. And it just didn't make sense. So we created these really nice, easy to read data sheets. All you have to do is fill out anything that's required is going to be required to be here before this step will work. But what you can do is you can fill in the red, and I'm not going to do it all just for the sake of time. But then there is this upload listing button. So basically what I'm doing is I'm building my listing in the MLS without having to rekey anything. Instead of filling all this out, turning it over to my admin, now having my admin put all of this in, yeeks. I can just click this upload listing button. And what it does is it actually creates a partial listing in the MLS. Now, the cool thing about it being a partial is my admins can go in and they can say, oh, Colleen has a partial here. I'm going to add her photos, or I better check it. That one's always getting in trouble for her remarks. Oh, she put compensation in remarks. She's going to get fined. I better fix that for her. By the way, that was a hint. Don't put compensation or commissions in the MLS in any format. It's a $250 fine if it's even in remarks or tours or anything. So don't do that. And yes, I'm on to you people with the pictures lately, like the refrigerator with the 3% and the magnets on the door. We're on to you. That counts too, so don't do that. But this is a way your admins can actually go in and they can finish your partials, add photos, add disclosures, things of that nature. Or maybe you're not ready to list just this moment. You just want to get it all ready so that the minute they sign their listing agreement, you can make it live. You can do that. All you got to do is go in, review it, add in any additional pieces, hit save, and your listing will be live. Or you can add some additional pieces and save it as a partial still. But it's a great way to not have to rekey any information. So I love that. That came right, by the way, you have to fill it all out, obviously, the red. But fill that out, hit that upload button. It's going to send everything over to the MLS for you. Hopefully your admins can take it from there if that's the policy, but it certainly keeps them from rekeying anything. Okay, so that's one of the cool features in here as well. On the listing side, I am going to show you the seller's disclosure in just a moment as we start taking a look in the Authentisign program. So if you have any questions on creating a listing or creating a purchase agreement, now is the time to get those into the questions box for Taylor. I'm going to show you a couple other cool things while you type out those questions before we start the Authentisign portion. All right,
there was a question, Colleen,
okay.
just waiting for you to finish up that part, but there was a question that was asking about removing or skipping a page and adding any additional pages.
Yes, you can do that. Matter of fact, it's the same in TransactionDesk and Authentisign. I will actually show you that stuff. So if you've used the document slicer and let's say you've taken out a couple of pages, can you add additional pages? And the answer is absolutely yes. Not only can you add them, but if you were like me the other day and you're driving along and you realized I scanned 2 of them in upside down, you can rotate them, you can add them, you can remove them, and you can bundle them all together after you've done that. So I'll actually show you that step next. So I just want to cover one more quick thing before we go there, and that is actually clauses. This is going to start playing a much bigger point now with our buyer representation agreements, and I'm helping many brokerages. As a matter of fact, I got in a brokerage in Grosse Pointe tomorrow I'm going to help them set up clauses. So the idea of a clause is every once in a while you've got the language just perfect. And this happens to me all the time. It's like my brain just, have you ever gotten it written where it just looks perfect? Like you've got seller concessions and you got all the details in there and you read it to yourself and you go, wow, I'm good, right? Then the next time you sit down, you try to fill out that same document, all of a sudden you're like, that sounds terrible. I'm not saying this right. How did I say that before? And you got to go find that purchase agreement, try to copy it. And here's a simpler way. Clauses can be set up by you on your own, or your brokerage can actually set them up for your entire office. Okay, so let's say I wanted to put in some terms about all buyer must sign buyer representation before touring the property, right? I can go to my clause editor and I can see all of the clauses. You can even create these cool folders to, if you're like me and you have OCD and you want a folder to keep track of, keep them organized. If I want to go into my folder and see my buyer representation clauses, I can do that. So all I do is I go to clauses. I'm going to use my personal ones just because I got a lot of them here. You can go into your folders and see them that way. Or let's say I'm going to use my buyer has 7 to 10 days to complete their home inspection. All results must be in writing, so I'm going to pick that one. I'm also going to, actually, let me use that one. Usually I teach this a lot. I got the same clause in here a lot, but maybe I'm also going to ask the seller to pay up to $400 and not to exceed $400 for a home warranty. And maybe I'm going to ask them, the seller will contribute X to the buyer's closing cost on my purchase agreement. Taylor, are you proud of me how I worked all those MLS changes into one class? I mean, was that good or was that good? All right, so I'm going to go into my clause. I know it wasn't easy. Let me tell you, I had to come up with some creative examples. Taylor's really good at that too, to shoot, improving in classes and getting it all in there. But anyway, so I'm going into my clauses here. Obviously, I can change them, but you see how I just put in 3 different clauses with one click. If I want to put what that amount is, I can go here and I could obviously say I want to not to contribute more than 3% of the closing costs or $4,000, whatever it happens to be, right in my purchase agreement. So again, this clause editor is huge. It will save you a tremendous amount of time if you just set your clauses up. So how do you set clauses? Well, right over here on the left side of your screen is your clause manager. And just like when we were looking at transactions, I can create personal clauses or office clauses. All you're going to do is click add, just like we do for creating a new file. You can add a new clause or a new folder to keep them organized. So I'm going to create a new clause, give it a title like buyer representation agreements. And maybe I want to put something like all buyers must sign a buyer representation agreement before showing a home or before touring a property, whatever you want to say. You get the idea. That's how easy it is to create them. You hit save, bam, it's now added. And again, once you've got them there, so let's say you want to move it to a folder, if you click those 3 menu dots, you could edit it at any time, move it to a folder, or simply delete that particular clause. If your office sets them up, of course, you can't delete those, but you can set up you can delete any ones you set up. And then right over here, brokers and agents can create templates. So if you are at an office that does not have templates, don't think, oh, geez, I really liked her listing packet. How do I get it? All you got to do is go over to the left side of your screen, click on transaction templates. And by the way, you can see if your office created them. See the little 2 people right here? This is an office level template. If you create it as an agent and you are the only one seeing it, it's a personal template, and you'll know it has one little agent being here and that you are the only one that sees that particular packet. So how do you create those templates? How do you put those listing packets and sales packets together? Click on add, and then just give it a name. Like I want to call this Colleen, actually, use Lori Brown's awesome listing packet. Okay. And I want it automatically to apply to all my residential listings. You can even put a little description in there. And then it's just what forms do you want? So that's really the hardest part. You've given it a name. I'm going to go down here to my form section. By the way, if you've got some marketing material, you could add those. Same thing as I showed you before. You can just add a document. You can even add folders to keep track of it. But I want to add in my listing forms now. So of course, I want to make sure I'm adding my real source data form that I showed you, right, for my listing packet. So I'm going to open up the my real source forms and I'm going to say, yep, I want to have the residential. I also want to use that great exclusive right to sell. And of course, I want my agency disclosure. So you get the idea. I'm literally going through and selecting any forms. And by the way, you can have some MAR forms, some company forms, some my real source forms. So let's say I got my real source forms added, but I also want to add my Michigan Realtor forms. I can go in, maybe my seller's disclosure comes from there, or my lead-based paint disclosures. Most people are using the Michigan Realtor forms for those. So you can add those in too. All right. Any questions before we hop into the last portion, Taylor? All right. So let's go into signings. Authentisign. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. Nope, everything looked good.
All right, great. Thanks for manning all the questions today. It helps a lot. I appreciate it. Okay, so signings. Signings, if you've done the steps I just showed you, all of the hard part is really in TransactionDesk. If you do the heavy lifting in TransactionDesk, meaning the documents and the contacts are there, this next piece is a breeze. Of course, when you click, I always like to start from the little pen over here. It's kind of personal preference. You can start from 5 different places, but I like to always go to the little pen over here to the left because I can actually see all of the signings that have been previously done. I can see if they were a draft, meaning that I never sent them, if they were sent and completed by a client. This happened to be a real closing that just had a couple of weeks ago. If it expired, if everybody signed it. So everything is kind of listed here, but there's a trick to this. Where it says optional when you're doing this, don't think of it as optional. I promise if you do this one step, it will save you so much time down the road. So let's take a look. Let's say that Suzanne is ready to get everything signed by her client. She's going to go over here. She's again just going to follow that same pattern. I'm adding a new signing, just like you were adding a new file or adding a new form or a new document. And I'm going to call this my 41539 purchase agreement. Or actually, we'll do 415 listing docs. I'll make a little more sense as we go through the examples. Okay, so where it says optional right here, I never want you to think of that as optional, because if you should think of it as optional if you want to do more work, because this will save you 10 to 15 minutes on your e-sign. You always want to tie what you're sending for signatures to the file you want it to be deposited back in. So let me kind of explain. Think of anything you're sending in Authentisign like this envelope. Okay, so think of it like this envelope. All the documents are in the envelope. But when the document is all signed, you want it to go back in the envelope in the file it belongs to without having to keep touching it and piecemealing it because it will take you forever. So what you want to do is you really want to marry the envelope you're about to send to really just who you're sending it to, right? So you're just marrying the two. If you do that one step, it will save you so much time in working in Authentisign. So let's take a look. So I'm starting, I've got my name. Where it says add to transaction, this is where I'm marrying it, right? This is where I'm finding my Wessel Drive for Bob Schmagegi here, or our purchase agreement on whatever we're adding it to. And I'm going to say, I want it to be married to that because I want it to pull the contacts. Actually, we'll use Lori's here for a second. I want it to pull the contacts I want it to pull who the people are. I want it to be able to pull the forms. So let's take a look. Now I'm in Authentisign. It's literally just like the wizard you saw before, same thing. Except when I go to add the parties, I don't want to do any work. I just want to pull them from the transaction. So I can see, oh, yep, there's Lori's name, there's Colleen's name, and here is our Bertha B buyer. Now, Lori is the co-opting agent, right? So she has it listed. So I'm not going to send it to her for signing, right? I'm going to simply CC Lori on after my buyer signed it and I witnessed it and we did all the signing. I just want it to go to her now. I just want her to have a delivered copy with a timestamp receipt of when she got it. But there's one other thing. And I had the nicest little lady in my class. I felt so bad for her. So she was brand new to real estate. She took, back then we just taught Authentisign separately. It was a little more cumbersome because you don't know how you got all those things there, right? So she called me and I was driving home and she said, Colleen, just crying. And I felt so bad. She's a little bit older. I think technology was kind of a challenge for her anyway, but she was doing her first deal. And I said, call me if you have any questions when you're sending it out tonight. So she called me, I'm driving home and she said, Colleen, I am so embarrassed. I have sent this to my buyer 7 times. They are calling me. They're upset. They're afraid they're going to lose this house. It's not going to them. I think your system's broken. I tried to do everything you said. And I felt so bad. I literally pulled over on the freeway. I felt so bad for her. I literally pulled over on the freeway to go in and figure out what was happening with this poor lady. And so what had happened was she did the steps right, except for one thing. There is an order in real estate, right? I'm never going to send it to Lori Brown, the co-opting agent, if my buyer hasn't signed it yet, right? That order has to make sense. So in this case, she had sent it to her poor buyer 7 times, but she put her as the first signer. So it was all this time coming to her and it never made it to them. So this is a really important step. If you are putting in the co-opting agent or you're adding attorneys in the other side of the deal, you want to make sure you have that order just like you would do it on paper. On paper, I would sit in front of my buyer would sign it. I, of course, would not witness it, and then I would send it to the co-opting agent. So you follow that same pattern here. If you remember that, this is going to be really, really easy. So in this case, I want to toggle on the signing order because I'm sending it to Lori. If I was only sending it to me and my buyer, well, I really wouldn't care which of us signed first. So if it was just the 2 of us, I wouldn't have an order. Whoever opens it first, signs it first is great. But in this case, I'm sending it to the co-opting agent. I don't want Lori to get a blank offer. She'd be like, what kind of nitwit am I working with here? So I want it to go in a logical order. So these are the people who are going to be signing it. Of course, if I need to add additional people, I can. But now I want to put them in the right order. So first I'm going to have I usually like my buyer to sign first in case I miss any initials or anything. I get one more chance to check it when it comes to me. So I like my buyer to go first, then to me. Now I'm going to send it to Lori. Now, when you see this CC role, this is not like CC on an email. This is really set up for co-opting agents, title companies, or lenders. Because if these 2 people don't sign it, if we don't have a signed agreement, Lori doesn't want it, right? She doesn't want a blank purchase agreement. She doesn't need that. A title company isn't going to start the title process if you have no deal. So this CC role that you can add, let's say I wanted to add a title company. I can go in and I can say, okay, I want to add a new title company. I can put in their first name, last name, and email address. I can even assign a role here too. And I could make them, instead of a signer, I could make them a CC. So they only get it if everybody's signed that I set up, then they get an executed copy. By the way, you can even put in a personalized message for these parties too. So I love that. I think it really does make it easy. You can add people on the fly if you need to, like attorneys, things like that. But again, if you do all the heavy lifting in TransactionDesk, you see, bam, 2 people added in that quick, we're done. Okay. One of the differences between this program and many of the others is a husband and wife can share an email address. You can't do that in .loop in many of the other signing platforms. So keep in mind, they can. It does ask them to verify that they are in fact that person. Now, if you're working in a divorce transaction, I don't know I would do that. But for the average transaction, you can send it to one email for both parties. Okay, so the first step is actually done. We've picked our parties right from our transaction forms. Now, what docs do you want to send? Well, we did all that hard work too. Now, here's the cool thing. Remember how Lori did a great job and she had her documents in there, her seller's disclosure, her lead-based paint disclosure. How nice is it when I just go through and I pick all the forms that Lori already had her clients fill out, plus my offer to purchase and these additional. So I'm going to do my general addendum here. I'm going to send my purchase agreement. I'm just picking any of those forms. If you got to here and you forgot something, of course, you can click import or upload. It's again, drag and drop, or you could click and it would open up your computer drives and you can pick from there too. Lastly, if you had a deal that died, let's say Lori Brown wrote an offer at 123 Main Street, and unfortunately they had a home inspection, and it was just scary. The whole foundation was crumbling, but Lori's a great agent. She ran out there. She found a beautiful house on the water the next day, and now she's written it up, but she doesn't want to have to go back and rename 123 Main Street because she wants a file of that, right? In case there's ever a legal, hey, we wrote, what did you write on that home? So what I want to do is I want to start my new file, but maybe I want to go in and I want to grab the pre-approval. I want to grab the copy of the EMD check. I want to grab their buyer's representation agreement because I don't want to fill in out another one. I just want to grab that particular one. So you can actually go in and copy those other documents into your new file. So you don't want to just rename it or kill the old file. You just want to copy those important pieces into your new file. Okay, this is also, so someone asked a great question. I'm not sure who it was, but Taylor read it. And she said, can you add more? Can you remove forms? Can you add forms? The answer is yes. You can add more things right here or same steps in TransactionDesk. But let's say that I scanned this page in and I just noticed that I scanned it in upside down. So it literally looks like this. And I'm embarrassed. I don't want to send this to Lori. She's going to be like, geez, Colleen, what are you doing over there? I can go ahead. I can rotate these pages back into the right order. I could delete an additional page. So maybe I got here and I forgot to slice off the buyer's agency agreement. I can do that right from this step as well. Okay, so once we've got all of these things set up, now the last thing you can see right here, it's going to know where my buyers actually need to sign. It's going to know where they, on this one, because I pulled this one over and it's already filled out, I would have to actually tag this one. So let's actually do that. So I'm going to say that my buyer, our Bertha B buyer here, is going to initial. And now we're scrolling down. We're going to add in our buyer's signature here. And we're going to add in our auto date, which will date the time that they sign it, by the way. And you can add an automatic time as well. But let's say that there's a particular document that you don't want to, let's say you're not going to tell them whether or not to have a home inspection or whether or not to have a home protection plan. I love that, because if we did optional initials, let's face it, most buyers are going to check both of them, and now you got a contract that's not worth a hill of beans, right? So what I want to do is I actually want to use these radio buttons. The radio buttons will allow them to pick yes or no, but they can't select both. You can also right-click to copy a radio button. So you can make more. Maybe there's 3 options, but you only want them to pick one. You can also create drop downs. So I can create a drop down with maybe yes or no for them to select from. So there's some other options here too. But of course, there's just the basic signatures and check boxes here if you're looking for that. So once I've got this all tagged up, now I do know most of us, I think most of us are still witnessing our contract. So got a signature already set up. You see how because you've told it who the people are, do you see how nice it is when, because I've already said this is that person, it's already got these boxes already in place for them to sign. Of course, the bottom line doesn't automatically sign generally, because that's something we do after we get that seller's acceptance. So I've got it all set up. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit next. I can give it an expiration date, or maybe I want to remind that title company that this is a divorce situation and maybe we need separate closing rooms, or I've already informed them they need a copy of their divorce decree, something like that. You can actually put that right into the sending invitation. Only that one party is going to see that. And then last, all we have to do is hit send. And it's off and running to our first party. You can see it's been sent here. And as they start to sign those documents, it's going to show who signed them and where they are in the completion process. Okay, so let me show you this last new feature. I'm going to try to do it pretty quickly because it is brand new. And I know there's been a lot of questions about it. It is the sending of the seller's disclosure. I know everybody's like, what is going on with that? It used to work. It's now broken. Actually, it's not broken. It's gotten better than it ever was. And so let me show you. So we are going to send our seller's disclosure to our people at 41539 Wessel Drive who are going to be listing with us. So of course, I'm going to pick that as my transaction. And I'm now going to start that process. So in this case, I am going to add in my seller's disclosure. Let's see, I'll just pull in one quickly to make it a little bit easier. Oops. Let's see. I thought I had one really handy, but I guess I don't. So I'm just going to grab one from Mar. I apologize. I thought I had one right on top here that I could grab, but I must have not. So, okay. So we are going to send our seller's disclosure. And as I mentioned, this used to be a two-step process, which meant the seller would literally have to go in and fill out all these little check marks and all the fields, and then we'd have to get it back, look at it, now resend it for them to go through the signing process. And it's just really convoluted. And it was because it was an open document and they couldn't do the same things at the same time. But now they have corrected that. So all I have to do is add a signer. So I'm going to, let's say I'm going to add a transaction contact. We are going to, actually we will add Samantha Seller here. Now, because I'm adding her, you're going to notice that as soon as I added the seller, the cool thing is, do you see what just happened here? As I added the seller, it opened up the form and it's going to allow her to initial and sign it at the same time. But this only happens if you've selected the seller. So you do have to pick the name of the person, that person is the seller for this document, because this is a seller filled out document only, right? The only person who's ever going to fill out this document is a seller, never done by the agent. At least it's not supposed to be. I know, I hear those stories too. But now it is all set for the seller to not only fill it out, but sign it in the same step. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to hit next. Again, you could give it an expiration date. You could even put a little message like, call me if you have any questions in filling this form out. And now you've sent it in one easy step. Okay, so I know I'm 1 minute over, but I promise we're done. Let me show you where you can find this class recording, because that's always the next question. Colleen, that was great, but I'm totally overwhelmed. Like, that was a lot. And it is a lot because we're showing Authentisign and a listing and a buy side. It's going through so much. So in that case, when you're ready to, let's say you don't write an offer for 2 months, where do you go to see this class recording? Well, you can actually go to resources where you find all of your tools. And if you go to education, recorded webinars, Taylor has done an awesome job putting all these great playlists and videos in one easy place. So if you click on videos, you're going to see, maybe you just want to know how to use clauses or set up clauses. I just finished that video yesterday. That's there. I was supposed to tell you that, Taylor, by the way. Sorry about that. The clause manager is right here. The cloud CMA class that we just did. So basically some role playing with the new MLS conversations. that we're having with sellers. Like, what do you do when a seller says, well, I don't have to pay that pesky buyer agent anymore, do I? You know, what are some 2-minute role playing videos that you can watch to talk about those types of things? We're rolling out auto pay for some of the offices so that agents can pay their bill automatically. And so that's there. Paragon MLS time saving tips. So all of these are right here. And you can watch these 24 hours a day. Of course, I hope I get to see more of you in upcoming classes where you can find, and I have some updating to do here. We've been kind of busy with the MLS practice changes, but if you go back to that same place, resources under the education corner, this is also where you, and Taylor built this. She's really got an eye for design. So thank you, Taylor, for making it look nicer than I ever could. She built this great template where you can actually register for any class. So maybe you want to take Cloud CMA October 1st. Click here. It'll take you to register. We've got property tax records. Lisa Harris does a great job with that. Taylor and I teach a class together called Tools for Tackling Low Inventory. She, of course, has her photo program, creating listings from A to Z, Kubacasa, but everything can be found right under that resources section in Paragon. So again, resources, education corner, recorded webinars, all of those are right there. All right, Taylor, any last questions before we wrap it up?
I'm pretty sure you covered it, but just to remind everybody in case it was missed, about the seller disclosure having to be filled out by the seller. There was a question about that.
Okay, so yes, that's one of those it's a state required document. And if you're new in real estate, the seller's disclosure is a document that really is always filled out by the seller. Some brokerages don't even allow the address to be auto-populated. They believe that the seller should be even putting that on the form. So that seller's disclosure really is just a way that the seller is filling out what they know about the property. And I did want to show you one other thing real quick. When your seller gets it, because I know one question about, well, what does the seller see? It's kind of nervous at first too. Like, is this going to be easy for them to sign? When the seller sees it, it can have your branding if you've put that in Authentisign. And it also has your contact information, and it comes from you. Because let's face it, your seller doesn't know who the heck Authentisign is or TransactionDesk, right? They just know you. It's their trusted agent. So all they do is they get it from you, Colleen DeLang, via Authentisign. They click the Start Signing, and it's really that simple for them. So as they go in, this gives them the ability to, again, if you've sent them the seller's disclosure, they can fill that document out. If you've sent them just the simple signing, go back to that one too. The simple sign, so I sent them the listing documents, right? They click Start Signing. It says that they agree that it's a legal binding signature in all 50 states. They're, of course, going to, and these are optional, by the way, so they can hit accept or decline, accept or decline, accept or decline. But it's a lot. You see how we didn't have to do any of this tagging? That really is the beautiful part of this, is it's literally taking them, and I tell my clients, always read it over first, then do the signing, but it's literally taking them to every single place. This is that yes, no radio button. So if I pick yes, you can see it doesn't let me pick no. It only lets me pick one of those. So really, really easy to sign these documents. Okay, and then let me go to that one too. Back to the seller's disclosure again. The seller's disclosure is going to be filled out by that seller that we sent. Now, I like this because if they make a mistake, when we do this in pen at the kitchen table, right, they make a mistake, you get 9 crossouts on something because they didn't realize there's like an NA column, right? The fields are open, so of course they can type into those fields. And the beautiful thing is they can sign it now at the same time. But remember, the key to that is you have to tell Authentisign when you are sending the seller's disclosure that they are the seller. That is the key. Otherwise, these little dots will not appear. Okay, that is it. Thank you. I know I ran a couple of minutes over. I appreciate everybody sticking with me. how are you able to send the seller disclosure to a seller to fill out? I think I got that, but if you need any help, you're more than welcome to call support. We can walk you through it again. You're just clicking on the seller's disclosure in Authentisign to add it, and then be sure that you've included that seller role. Everything else will fall into place just like you're seeing here. All right. Well, thank you everybody for your time. Thank you, Taylor, for manning all the questions. I really, really appreciate it, and hope you have a great day. Happy selling, everybody.